For our business, a digital twin is really a virtual representation of a real-time digital counterpart. And that means it could be a physical object or a process or a workflow or anything like that. The majority of the ones that we do from a digital twin perspective usually are predicated upon an asset, right? And you mentioned heavy industry. So in our case, we serve and have served heavy industry for multiple decades. And they have enormous turbines and compressors and pumps out there in the field. And those are absolutely critical to their operation. And you can't take it apart because if you take that facility down, it stops producing and it stops making money. So you have to have a way to be able to diagnose and prepare and predict and all the things that you mentioned as we preface this conversation. You have to have a way to be able to do that without interrupting the process.
If there's one thing we've learned, it's how fragile and unpredictable supply chains can be. Ideally, companies need to be able to forecast potential disruptions and be able to see possible workarounds, preferably in real time. It's the next big step in achieving the agility that's becoming critical to surviving in complex market conditions. But can we get this kind of sharp view that pulls together a wide range of moving parts operating at the same time in multiple locations around the world? I'm Jane Singer, and thank you for joining me today on A Seat at the Table. Each week, I sit down with industry leaders, innovators, entrepreneurs, and authors who share their expertise, experience, and insights so that we can identify those steps that lead to greater success. This week, I reached out to John Lindsey, president of Incite Logix, a company that has a decades-long history of building just this kind of digital model. I wanted to learn more about the latest developments and how they might be applied to the apparel industry and other consumer goods supply chains. A lot of you have been asking me about new technology, specifically for supply chain management. In this episode, John is going to be talking about digital twin software, a predictive model that's been used extensively in heavy industry and more recently is being adopted by many other sectors, including retail. You'll learn how digital twin modeling works and how it can be used to better control supply chains, as well as some up-and-coming developments that are going to be game-changing by enabling us to link multiple digital models. Then we're going to get into something that I think is really exciting, which is how digital twin technology is being used to provide business simulations to better train employees. And finally, we're going to talk about what could be the next big thing in supply chain technology. As we come to the end of another year, I just wanted to take a moment to thank all of our wonderful listeners around the world for joining me each week. It's great to have you as part of our community of leaders, innovators, and entrepreneurs. A Seat at the Table is now listened to in 92 countries. I know, sometimes I can't believe it myself. Of course, none of this would be possible without the truly awesome people who've been my guests on the show and have generously shared their insights and expertise with all of us. It's really been an honor and a privilege to spend time with each person, many of whom are leading industry experts, entrepreneurs, or authors, as well as those who are part of our Launch to Legendary series and are inspiring us with their incredible creativity and innovation. I learned so much from each episode, and I hope you do too. I send all of you my heartfelt good wishes for the coming year, and I look forward to being here with you and bringing you a truly stellar program featuring so many talented people who'll be guests on A Seat at the Table in the coming year. If you'd like to see what's coming, I'll be posting some updates on our website at seat.fm. You can also find all of the previous episodes of A Seat at the Table there and the show notes. So that's seat.fm, SEAT.fm. Now let's dive into the exciting world of digital twins and find out how we can possibly avoid some of the supply chain chaos that we've been dealing with for the past 2 years. Well, I'm just thrilled to have you on the show, John. The apparel supply chain is starting to become very interested in technology, and it had been sort of a lagger in that respect. And I think that a lot of people are now starting to think about, particularly in view of the disruptions, the unprecedented disruptions that we've had in the past 2 years, things we never even imagined. And people are starting to think about, wow, it's more than just chasing price. We have to figure out how to be resilient, how to have a supply chain that can withstand a lot of different impacts. So as I started to look around and see some of the technologies that are being used in other industries, you can see that in other industries, heavy industry in particular, there's a lot of interesting technology. And this concept of digital twins and the ability to have multiple predictive approaches is really interesting. So I thought maybe you could start by explaining what's meant by digital twins.
Well, sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. I'm grateful to be here, and I'm actually looking forward to it. It's going to be quite fun.
Yeah.
So, from our perspective, let me preface this by saying, listen, we're in Austin and Houston, Texas, and we're a small firm that has been doing this type of work for a very, very long time. But any definition that I give you is simply my definition. Everyone has a different one. You'll find when you start talking about digital twins, AI, machine learning, all those things, everybody's application of it and usage of it and marketing definition, quite frankly, is a little bit different. For me, personally, and for our business, a digital twin is really a virtual representation of a real-time digital counterpart. And that means it could be a physical object or a process or a workflow or anything like that. The majority of the ones that we do from a digital twin perspective usually are predicated upon an asset, right? And you mentioned heavy industry. So in our case, we serve and have served heavy industry for multiple decades. And they have enormous turbines and compressors and pumps out there in the field. And those are absolutely critical to their operation. And you can't take it apart because if you take that facility down, it stops producing and it stops making money. So you have to have a way to be able to diagnose and prepare and predict and all the things that you mentioned as we preface this conversation. You have to have a way to be able to do that without interrupting the process. And so the digital twin for heavy industry is let's build an exact replica of that pump and let's do the diagnostics. Let's put different viscosity liquids through it. Let's ramp it up on the RPM side. Let's lower it down. Let's introduce weather events. Like for instance, in Texas, last year we had a freeze that shut down just about the entire United States. We could have looked at what would happen if there was an extended freeze for 10, 12 days at minus 20 and known that those assets were going to fail. And so from our perspective, we build these things so that you can essentially do surgery on the replica, find out what's going to happen on the real one before you ever touch it. You don't want to do surgery and anything experimental on the live patient per se. So that's our definition of it. And whether it's a product, whether it's a process or a workflow, all the same way.
It's really interesting. So then theoretically, you could, with let's just say a supply chain, for example, like for apparel or other consumer goods, you could have your actual one that you're running at the moment, but you could be building multiple models so that you could see if this happens and we did this, what would be the outcome? If we did that, what would be the outcome? You could be looking at multiple scenarios and impacts at the same time. Is that the case?
Oh, absolutely. And I'll give you a perfect example of when we're about to start. It's a retail example. It's not apparel, but it's in the cell phone industry where it's SIM cards. And what this particular company wants to know is they're going to do sales all across and they're selling, 1 million of these a day. So it's a high volume, it's moving fast, and they want to know what sale is most effective. And so, you build this digital twin of this process and you simulate what could happen, right? What happens if we sell a whole host of them over in this particular geographic? Can we restock them fast enough on the shelves? Can we move the materials from one location to another if we have selling in one region and we have no selling in the other? What happens throughout this process? So you can run all these what if analysis to determine what's going to happen. And once you've got it built, it can also be monitoring the actual process as well, right? So we can do the what ifs, we can predict what we think is going to happen, but then in addition to that, that digital twin is replicating what's happening currently as well. So it's like being in the process and being immersed into the process. And it goes all the way back to manufacturing. So those cards, they have to come from somewhere, right? And so if they're as the materials that manufacture those cards, silicon chips, what happens with the car industry now because they can't get the chips, right? So every element of that supply chain is impactful in some capacity, and it's really difficult without a digital twin to be able to put that whole thing together and put it in motion. The human brain just can't do that. So this is the way to be able to start to finish, monitor that entire process, and then interject the what ifs into it. So it's a phenomenal way to do what you described in terms of predictive analysis.
That's so incredibly interesting and so relevant, as we've been discussing, to what's happening today, particularly for people who have these complex global supply chains. Now, I was just curious, in some ways, digital twins seem to be an enhancement of traditional PLM systems. How do you see them differing? I mean, where do you see them diverging from that?
Well, I guess I'd have to say from the digital twin concept, again, first John, second opinion here to make sure it's just this is the way we have viewed it. The real-time data processing piece and exchange between the virtual product model and its twin, to me, is dramatically different than the product lifecycle management. I mean, that is really the concept of at least from my perspective, was the PLM was really defining the data processing and exchange in general. It really was not a real-time component of all these other elements. It just did not have the capacity to bring those things in. Back in our day, the reason we moved away, and look, we did those for a long time. I mean, the players, the software. It's been around for a long, long time, and it was solid when all it could do and technology could do was that. But now we have the introduction of so many additional technologies. First of all, we have data sets that can train models so effectively and efficiently now because of the vast amount of data that we've collected. We can be so precise with that. The PLMs back in the days that we at least used them did not have that capability. The cloud has given us the ability to be able to take all this information in real time from everywhere and culminate it into these models. And we've been able to daisy chain all these models that we build at least together into this digital twin, which gives us just this real-time capacity. We've never, in my day, and again, I could be wrong now in terms of where PLM is advanced to, but the majority of firms that used to do PLM like we did have moved on to the digital twin for all those reasons. It's just so much more accurate. It's so much more flexible. It takes advantage of the latest technologies. And it gives you just the real-time virtualization and simulation that we want to look at. So it's a better mousetrap in my opinion.
Okay. Now, in order to implement a digital twin, do you need to have Internet of Things in place?
Well, so the answer is probably no, because again, a lot of times throughout a process, you're not going to have necessarily the advantage of the IoT pieces. When we build the digital assets, it's slightly different. Almost inevitably, you're going to have an enormous amount, particularly in most process industries today. They have those things out there now, right? You're already measuring temperature and flow and pressure and all those things. So those sensors are typically going to be available to you. And that's not uncommon. In the process space, not so much. For instance, I mean, if you're putting two labs together and they're not necessarily high-tech labs, you can't make the assumption that a lot of those IoT sensors are going to be in place. So, we're manufacturing virtual gates along the way so that we can tie that to the process without having the IoT piece there. I'll give you a great example. One of our digital twin leaders, he did the Heathrow Airport for luggage man. You can go on our website and look at, if you ever lost your luggage, you know how frustrating that is. Well, there's not really any IoT sensors on everybody's piece of luggage, right? So we have to make some assumptions about what that process looks like and really work with what we've got, because you're never going to have, at least not in my lifetime, I don't think, you're not going to have something on your bag that's going to tell you exactly where within that process it is. But it's still our job to make that process as efficient as we can possibly make it, find the bottlenecks, and understand how we can introduce, again, flight delays, gate changes, all the things that go into what happens when you lose your luggage. We've got to be able to assimilate those into this digital twin and have it still produce. So it's not necessary to have those, but I'll tell you, it makes it a heck of a lot easier, because the data sets you get from IoT now, where it's simply spitting out gobs of data as frequently as you want it to, and we can take those massive amount of data sets. And as you know, machine learning gets better the more data you have. And so the algorithmic component of these digital twins thrives on vast amount of data. So the better, the more precise it's going to be if you have those large data sets. If you don't, we can still do it, but it's a different visualization because we can't rely on enormous data sets to support the algorithm like we can in instances where IoT is available.
Yeah, that makes sense. But at least it's a starting point for companies, because at this point, most things don't have those sensors, particularly when you move away from heavy industries. And that leads me to the next question. In your opinion, could digital twin technology be adapted for consumer product supply chains, such as apparel or other things where you have a really great number of inputs?
Oh, absolutely. And again, I think we're seeing it already. So the amount of requests this year that we've gotten, and I had mentioned earlier, Jane, that we really had been kind of a primary. If you had to look at the majority of engagements that we've had over the last, say, decade, it's really been process industry, heavy industry, discrete manufacturing. That's really kind of been the play for digital twins. Aviation, marine logistics. All of a sudden this year, we've gotten more requests than ever for retail, for
Really? Wow.
tech, for absolutely, because again, people saw what happened, right? They realized that even the smallest piece in that supply chain, if they didn't have some redundancy built in, it could cripple their entire ability to be able to produce. And so we're
Right.
seeing what happens then, right? And so, well, you might think that a pair of jeans might not be as important to somebody as an automobile, but to the companies that produce them and sell them, it's sure just as important. And so in my vernacular, the answer is absolutely yes. And so we've started to move into the retail sector more so than we've ever in the past. And I think it's because of this demand, with the realization that if you don't get some predictive analytics in place, and if you don't look at the global supply chain now and determine how you can reroute things globally, I mean, really what didn't happen, and I don't know if you've seen this or if you concur, but from our perspective in the analysis we've done on it thus far, it's no one really backed out the supply chain all the way back to its origins of where am I going to get the smallest nut and bolt in my process? And if I can't get it, what do I do? People didn't have backups in place. There was none. And so building the digital twin now for this particular sector and retail in general is really about going all the way back to the origins of the product, where it comes from, and making sure that we've got redundancy built into that entire process somewhere, where if we can't get it from this supplier, we can get it from this supplier. And it's not just about making sure we don't have the failures that we've seen. It's also about getting the best price, right? If we have that digital twin in place and it can go out and look and monitor pricing at all the different potential places that you can get those supplies you need, it can be checking all day to make sure you're getting the right price. It can tell you to renegotiate a contract, right? If you've got a smart contract attached to that, you could say, wow, you know what? We're getting cotton from this particular supplier, but right now, over here, we could get it for significantly cheaper and their supply is abundant. It's just the same quality. Wow, let's switch over. And our smart contract could move it over. Our digital twin told us that's what we needed to do. And it could monitor the timing of it. So it's got the ability to be able to open up channels to be extremely predictive, not just from a catastrophe and a pandemic perspective like we've seen, but really just from good business, right? We want to have redundancy built into our process. We want to get the best price and we want to produce as fast as we can and then get it out to the market as fast as we can. So it's amazing what you can do from start to finish with the digital twin once you map that process.
It's just incredible when you think about it. Doing so many multi-functions and comparing and contrasting scenarios in real time across such a vast number of different variables. It's really amazing. I'm just wondering, are you able to then create sort of a dashboard or a control tower so that someone would be able to sit there and have a much better view of where things are coming, almost like I suppose the way a control tower would work for air travel, right? Where you can see multiple scenarios and make these changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, if you could see my desk right now, I mean, just about everything that's on my desk is a dashboard of some sort, right, for a firm or an organization somewhere that wants to look at specific KPIs, both on the front end, back end, and mid-process throughout the entire cycle here. So yes, the answer is the goal for us and the goal for most companies at this point is to get that critical information to them in real time, wherever they happen to be, whenever they happen to want to see it, right? Everything is on demand now. So they expect it to be up to date and they expect it to be available on their phone, on their iPad, wherever they happen to be. And they shouldn't have to go get the information. It should be alerting them, right? It should be all push technology. So what people want from us today is not to have to go to their computer when they get home and type a thing, hey, show me this or show me that.
Right.
They want the system to talk to them, right? They want to get alerts all day long about what they should be looking at. So when they tell us what the key performance indicators are for their particular business, we're going to align that digital twin and that process up so that it is feeding them information constantly, right? And now with the with NLP and natural language processing, they can, if they want to ask something that they're not getting on it, they can just ask their phone, just like you could ask Siri. Hey, show me the number of barrels capacity that we're producing right now at the particular refinery that I want to look at, and boom, there it is right there. So it is amazing how far technology has come. I've been doing this a long time, and I still stop and get amazed sometimes at what I see because it just keeps growing and growing faster than you could ever think. The back end of our digital twins or our simulation or our virtualization, it always almost includes a gaming engine. We use Unity in most cases. There's a gaming engine back behind it because you want to be immersed in it, right? And where all this is going is the augmented and virtual reality. In order to do that, the gaming industry is so far ahead of everyone else in being able to do that, that the digital twins that we build, that we call management flight simulators, for instance, to help an MBA student comes into a business, they know nothing about it. Well, it's a game. You're going to put them into the virtual simulator, right? It's a digital twin. It's going to run. You're going to make all the decisions on this business for a day, a week, a month. And then you're going to score yourself and see how you did. Did you run the business into the ground? Did you perform well? Do you understand? And so it is unbelievable how much of the digital twin and virtualization / simulation market is driven by what the gaming industry has been able to accomplish.
We're going to take a quick break now, and then we'll be right back.
We were hiring when we were making 50 to 100K monthly losses.
And why? Welcome to episode 1.
I can't think of a single founder who's been around for a decent amount of time in business who hasn't had their tunnel of year. This was that year. We're going to be okay, yeah, Sheree. Some are going to hear this and think, you TDP. But hear me out. You only have to do the math to understand that very soon we were $500,000 down.
That is really incredible, because when you think about the ability for companies to train people, like you say, in a simulated environment like that, and the ability for people to get that hands-on experience without, like you say, crashing the business, it's remarkable. I mean, I would just love to get my hands on that.
Well, there's a comfort level too. Think about it. When you used to come in, it's been a long time since I've been young, but a lot of the smart people that I graduated with moved right into MBA programs. And what do? They put you right in. They move you to 5 or 6 different elements of the business, and they get you an understudy or an apprentice to walk you through. And it's really time consuming, takes a long time. There's an intimidation factor because you don't know anything. This is so much easier, right? They can do it at their own pace, at their own time. The intimidation factor is gone, and it's technology they grew up with, right? So this generation of people, when they come in to the workforce, they expect to see these things. In fact, I'm sure you're seeing this, particularly now with this whole, what do they refer to it? It's the great, I don't know what the word is, but everybody's leaving their jobs and going somewhere
resignation
else, right?
Or something.
The great resignation. There you go. You hit it. The great resignation. So you think about, when people make decisions about where they want to be or not be, technology is one of the ways that you recruit the top talent. It's also one of the ways that you retain the top talent. And so having some of this stuff for people that are used to growing up with this all their lives. I mean, you and I look and we go, wow, it's a digital twin. That's pretty amazing. I can't even believe it. Holy cow. I'm watching somebody do a surgery on a guy over here before he do the actual surgery. And you see a real body, and they're really actually doing it, right? Right. That's amazing. But for these kids, that's what they grew up with. Every video game looks like that to them.
Yeah, it's interesting. I love the fact that you're able to, like you say, perform a surgery on a digital twin prior to doing it on a patient. I mean, the implications of that are just mind-blowing. But if we get back to the manufacturing industry, are you able to create multiple digital twins? So in other words, you're not just seeing the one that's happening versus the simulated one. Can you see multiple at the same time?
Oh, absolutely. And so part of the need right now is exactly that, right? Because these industries that are all connected together in some capacity that serve and end up making up that global supply chain, they're not static entities, right? They're all moving. And so all of their processes, you can stop and map your entire process, the one you control, and then think you're going to apply it. Yours is moving and you think everyone else's is static. And so It doesn't work like that. So what we're finding is that's really kind of the next frontier in terms of what we're doing for people. It is, build the mothership, right? But then all the pods out here have to be running their businesses. Those digital twins need to function as is, and you need to be able to do what ifs on multiple digital twins all at the same time and interject all these what ifs into the overall ecosystem. And so the digital twin universe is an ecosystem itself. And so one digital twin was great by itself if you're talking about maybe an asset. But when you're talking about processes, particularly supply chain processes that cascade throughout all these different organizations, throughout all these different, and it's global, right? I mean, so it's even larger than that. So absolutely, they have to work together. And that's part of what we do from an integration perspective is we have to take all these disparate processes, because these are different organizations, right? Just like families, they all function differently and they all use different systems, right? It's nice to think that everybody's using SAP. And even if they are, quite frankly, they're not using it the same way. And they all have fields and designations that you call something name and somebody else calls it first and last. And so there's all these disparate data components floating out there that make up this digital universe that power these digital twins. And all those translations have to come together and work harmoniously into this ecosystem to make it work. And that's what we're capable of doing today because of all this advanced technology and computing power. It's unbelievable what's possible today.
Yeah, it really is. It's every time I learn about some new application, some new technology, I just think to myself, it is incredible what's been achieved in really such a short amount of time. Now, from the point of view of someone who is running a supply chain and wants to implement a digital twin application, what is it like to get that started? I mean, when you look at things that are coming out of heavy industry, it just looks overwhelming, so to speak, to get that up and running. What's it like?
No, it's actually quite simple. It really, I mean, again, so we take the approach that everything just gets broken down into really, really simple steps, right? So there's an evaluation process where we have consultants that are trained to come in and sit down and look at what you're doing today, the as is, right?
Right.
And then we've got to determine, once we determine what that as is looks like, we've got to determine what it is that you would like it to be able to do. And so it's really, and this is where we're really, really good because we're not experts in that particular field, right? A lot of people say, John, when you come in, like, let's use apparel. Apparel is a perfect example because the people that just hired us to do some of this retail stuff. So you guys aren't really retail guys. You guys are coming out of heavy industry. And we said, yep. But you know what? We have to listen. And so we're not prejudiced to your preconceived notions. We're not going to be stuck with, well, that's always the way we've done it. We're going to bring new thinking and best practices from other industries. So our skill set is really about coming in and listening, right? We come in and while we listen, we have to learn your industry as well, particularly if it's a new one. Like apparel would be a perfect example. We don't know apparel. We put our clothes on. That's about the knowledge we have about apparel. Right. But we understand because we work with Amazon and some of these other bigger logistic players, UPS and FedEx. They're not really, I mean, at the end of the day, people think of them as shipping companies. They're not shipping companies at all. Those are technology companies with massive logistics, right? With technology driving those logistics. Amazon can only get your package to your door in the same day because of what they're doing with technology. And this is the same way. We come in, we evaluate what you do today. We find gaps and areas that you might be missing or not taking advantage of best practices. We start to lay that out first to determine if it's going to achieve the goal that you want to get. We're not building technology for probably at least a month or two before we really start to lay out the business process side of it. So we are incredibly astute at being subject matter experts, taking information in and giving it back to you in a way that it can be more efficient. It can be utilized better within the ecosystem you're trying to build. And if your process is antiquated and outdated and won't take advantage of the latest technology, we can bring those best practices to bear. So, but you'd be surprised. It is what I tell people all the time is it's simple. It's not easy. And those are not the same things. Really what we do when you break it down into its pieces is really a simplistic approach. People will be very, very amazed because you think, oh my gosh, bits and bytes and technology and Python and HTML and all the stuff we do behind the scenes. Yeah, that's all good. But unless you get the process down first, which is really just a matter of moving material, right? And that's what it is. It's matter management at its core, right? So you break it down into its smallest components. You apply the best practices that we've been able to learn through decades of serving other industries. We bake your goals into it, and we take the latest technology we have available to ourselves, and we build that ecosystem out for you. Easy? No, it takes a heck of a lot of work, and you have to be skilled to do it. Simple? Yep, you'd be surprised. It's not that difficult at all. We look at these things and we think, we can, based on what you can tell us, because you're experts, right? And based on what we know from other industries and our skill sets for building digital twins and ecosystems like this, it's all going to come together, and it's going to produce the solution you want. And it's going to be something that you can modify and grow with over the years. That's the other important part of this, is that these systems, you don't want to have to keep reinvesting in these year after year after year. This is a very expensive proposition, right? And you got to train people, and you got to go through all this. You want these things to last and be able to grow and be flexible. And I think that's one of the things that we as an organization really, really focus on is scale.
So roughly how long, I know it varies per industry, per company, but if someone were to want to tackle this, what's the timeline typically like?
Well, it's funny that so we typically operate in sprints. Our CIO would tell you that we never take on a project that takes more than 100 days. And while that's true, you're not going to build a digital twin in 100 days. But we're going to do sprints of approximately 100 days, and we're going to knock out each one of these chunks. And for us, I think historically, if you looked at the systems that we have built over the years, 9 to 12 months is about what you would expect for an average. There are going to be some that are smaller, right? And more consolidated, and maybe don't integrate with and interface with so many systems that we could do in under 6 months. There's going to be some that might take 12 to 24 months, depending on how large they are. The simple magnitude of how big their supply chain is and how many vendors and all those things really, really play into it. But I would say 9 to 12, based on our experience over the years, 9 to 12 months is about average for us.
Oh, that's not bad, actually, when you think about it, compared to other systems that's about what it would take, I would think, to implement something.
Well, and it's way look, if you've ever watched organizations go through an SAP is a perfect example. If you ever watch somebody try to deploy an SAP implementation, Lord have mercy, it's millions of dollars, it's tons of consultants and people, it goes on for years, and 9 times out of 10 they're never happy with it. This is a much more finite operation, particularly if it's an asset. The digital twin assets go significantly faster because it's a closed system, right? You're not worried about so much of it is much, much easier to define. It's much, much easier to shape up and control. And the factors that play into, how it runs, where it runs, whatever, they're a lot more controlled. And so it's much, much easier doing an asset than it is a process or a workflow, because those are so custom.
Right.
So, and what we're seeing, the other thing I think that's helping us on the digital twin side from an asset perspective is the OEMs and the vendors and manufacturers are starting to put, you asked this earlier, are there sensors, that are going to be available? A lot of the equipment they're building today are just like cars. They're coming with the sensors on them. And so they have the ability to be able to start talking to us almost immediately. Whereas a lot of the refineries, in the United States here, we don't build new refineries. It's a joke here. We make rust run, right? They don't have the permit to be able to build. So we have to keep that old, really antiquated equipment, dinosaur age equipment running. That was never built to have sensors on it. And so they're really, really dramatically different than some of the new components that come out today that have a lot of the sensors already built into them because they're just so inexpensive, right? You would expect nothing less. So the digital twin really brings them into the 20th century because they can now monitor pieces of equipment that there was simply no way to. It was send an operator out in the field, sight, sound, smell. Does it sound like it's falling off the skid? Yeah, that's a problem. Does it smell like it's burning up? I think it's going to die, right? Yeah. You couldn't measure the ball bearing. You couldn't measure the grease. You couldn't do that. Those machines weren't built to do that. And so much, much easier with an asset than with a process.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how the whole ecosystem is coming together. Like you say, everything is being built with these sensors, so therefore it makes that integration easier. And even for those that don't, you say that you're able to work around it. So when we're looking at technology now, in addition to digital twins, what other technology do you think we should be looking for, we should be watching out for? What's the next big thing from your point of view?
For me, I think, and again, very, very, very humble little company here in Texas. What we get asked most about is the augmented reality. People want to figure out what this ultimately means because right now everyone's talking. They watch the big players talk about the metaverse, and so they don't really understand what does that mean from a immersion standpoint, right? So,
Right.
so am I really going out there and buying a piece of property in the metaverse? And when I buy an NFT, one of the non-fungible tokens, and it's a painting, do I, where does that actually exist? And does it really have value to it? And, do I have to put glasses on to go see it? And so we get a lot of questions now because that's gotten so much publicity over the last
Right.
90 to 120 days and we're all a little bit more isolated than we have been. So everyone's wondering about this connectivity of human beings. How's this going to work? If what blurs the lines between here and there? And I think that's, to me, I don't know what that looks like, but I can't tell you how yet because I don't understand it much better than most of the people that are asking me the questions. I keep thinking, okay, well, so that process that we're talking about and liken it to apparel. Am I doing my shopping now? Am I putting my AR, VR glasses on and I'm trying on my clothing and I'm in a virtual, changing room and I'm pulling my pants on? Am I watching myself pull my pants on? The metaverse characters look like they didn't have legs. So do we even need pants? I don't know. But watching what's happening there, to me, I think it seems to be I think most people don't understand it, myself included, but I think most of us know it's going to impact us in a way that we don't know what it is yet.
Right.
The visionaries, I think, have a much better feel for what they see happening here than just the layperson who's out here using the technology as an end user, which is what we do, right? They deliver really cool technology. We find ways to apply it. I don't have any comprehension of how it is going to change our world to be able to be immersed into this other thing. But I think it's going to have a massive impact on the way that we do business, on the way that we communicate as human beings, on the way that we live. It's already happening now. And so I think that, to me, that's the biggest thing I see coming down the pipe. And the reason I say that also is because it's connected to digital twins, right? Because in order to get in there and be immersed into something, you had to have built an ecosystem to be immersed in. And I think the digital twin is playing, it's a digital twin of reality, right?
Right.
So when the store in the metaverse is developed, well, what is it? It's based on a digital twin of a regular store, because that's
Right.
how we know how to build things. And so I think the connectivity between those digital twins and that virtual reality, coupled with the ability to get immersed into it in a way that we don't now. Right now, you've mentioned, hey, what do you do when you want to get information about your KPIs? You hold up a
Right.
dashboard and you look at it. But I'm not going into the plant in some sort of virtual capacity yet and walking around and experiencing it. And I think that's what's next. And I don't think any of us really, at least for people like me that just do this for a living, I don't think we have a real feel for how that's going to change the way we do business or the way we live our lives. I think it's going to be impact. It's big companies like that would have never invested the amount of money and time they're investing in if it wasn't going to happen. There's too much groundswell for it not to go somewhere. The question is, where does it go? I don't know the answer to that. It's scary.
Yeah, it is. You can see two scenarios, one very optimistic and one very pessimistic.
We get, and you may hear this too, we get a lot of questions, when we start talking about what we do, digital twins and all those things. And even though we don't feel like it's that sophisticated, and particularly in the legal industry now, where we're just embarking on this, is this stuff going to take our jobs? Are the robots and RPA and all that, is that all going to start coming in and they won't need lawyers anymore? And we're like, no, I don't know where the whole Terminator thing coming in, taking over listen, people are going to be part of this. There's going to be a human in this loop all the time. This is about creating technology that takes the repetitive, low value tasks off the table, and it can get done automatically so that people that are highly skilled can be freed up to do more valuable work. Really, that's
Right.
what this is really about, right? We want people that are highly paid, be focused on work that is highly valuable to the front, right? And that's really the focus. They're never not going to be part of the technology loop. We're always going to be in control of it. But the fear component is something that I see a lot of. People are very, very nervous about, what is this going to mean? Am I going to lose my job? Is it going to take over? Is it going to know more than me? Am I going to become indispensable, or am I disposable? I don't know.
Right. I think that's a very good point. And I think that people do fear that because there is always that sense that everything's going to be automated. But you're right. Technology is really a tool, and you need to have a skilled hand using that tool. It'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. Well, John, thank you so much for sharing so many great insights. I think that digital twins are something that we're going to see a lot more of, filtering into the apparel sector and into some of the other consumer goods sectors. I think it's just a matter of time. How can people find you? I'm sure that a lot of people who are listening to the podcast would have an interest in connecting with you and learning more. What's the best way for them to get in touch?
Well, I am on LinkedIn, John
Okay.
Lindsey. You can find me. And I have not been a social media guy. I just joined about 4 months ago. If you want to reach out directly to connect to me, my email address is johnl@incitelogix.com. That's INCITE. We got to spell it wrong. So
Okay.
INCITE, Logix, LOGIX. And you can, I'm sure, tag it in the bottom of the episode there. And I'm happy to talk to anybody who wants to chat with me with my email address too. But you can certainly find us out on LinkedIn. And our website is incitelogix.com. You can see, if you go to our website, right on the front page, there's about a 2.5 minute video that shows some of our digital twin and virtual activity that we've built over the years. It's pretty cool, and it'll give you an overview as to what those things look like in real life. You can see some of the real examples. So pretty neat stuff. We love it. It's really exciting times.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time. And I think that everyone is interested to be able to see how they can apply new technology to their businesses to be able to avoid some of the disasters, or at least find a better workaround, given everything we've been through in the past 2 years.
Well, I appreciate it too. And I think you're dead on. And I just wanted to say thank you for making a seat at the table for me. How about that? I got a seat at the table now. Got my seat at the table?
Exactly right. You have a seat at the table, John.
Oh, thanks, Jane. I appreciate it.
If you enjoyed this episode of A Seat at the Table, join me each week when I sit down with industry leaders, innovators, entrepreneurs, and authors who share their expertise, experience, and insights about succeeding in business and in life. And don't forget to check out our podcast website, where you can find all of the previous episodes of the Seat at the Table podcast, the show notes, news about our upcoming masterclass series, and lots of other useful information. You can find it at seat.fm. That's www.seat.fm. FM because it's a podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Jane Singer, and I'll see you in the next podcast episode.